They say you can measure a person's character by how they treat those who could do nothing for them. But what happens when that measurement becomes a mirror, reflecting back truths we're not ready to see? This is a story about assumptions, about the masks we wear, and about how a single moment can shatter the walls we build around our hearts. It's about a millionaire who forgot what it meant to struggle, a waitress who never stopped fighting, and a little girl whose tomorrow hung in the balance. Before you judge the ending, walk with me through the beginning. Because sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the ugliest packages. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you're watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful, true stories alive. The rain hammered against the windows of Rosewood Diner like angry fists demanding entry. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and Aaliyah Putin was running on fumes, literally and figuratively. Her 19-year-old Honda had coughed its last protest in the parking lot that morning, forcing her to take 2 buses to get to work. She'd been on her feet for 11 hours, and the throb at her lower back had become a constant companion, like a cruel friend who never knew when to leave. Table 12 needs a refill, barked Titus, the night manager, barely looking up from his phone. Aaliyah grabbed the coffee pot, her reflection in its silver surface showing a 28-year-old woman who looked closer to 40. Dark circles beneath her hazel eyes told stories of sleepless nights and early mornings. Her daughter, Diane, had been coughing for 3 days now, a wet, rattling sound that sent ice through Aaliyah's veins every time she heard it. The school nurse had called again yesterday. Diane needed to see a doctor, a real doctor, not the free clinic where they'd wait 4 hours just to be told to monitor the situation. The medical bill sitting on Aaliyah's kitchen counter might as well have been written in blood, $1,247.83, for a chest x-ray, antibiotics, and a follow-up appointment. Money she didn't have. Money she couldn't even dream of having. "Mommy, when will you be home?" Diane's small voice echoed in her memory from their video call during her break. Mrs. Orkin, their neighbor, was watching Diane again. The elderly woman refused payment, but Aaliyah saw the exhaustion in her eyes too. Everyone was tired. Everyone was struggling. This was life at the bottom, where one unexpected expense could send you spiraling into an abyss you might never climb out of. Aaliyah approached table 12 with her well-practiced smile, the one that said, "I'm here to serve you," while hiding the scream building in her chest. The man sitting there looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. Jefferson Bruce. She'd recognized him immediately. Everyone in Millhaven knew Jefferson Bruce. His face had been plastered across the business section of the newspaper for months after his tech company, Novatech Solutions, had sold for $340 million. $340 million. Aaliyah couldn't even conceptualize that number. It was like trying to imagine the edge of the universe. He was 42, with salt and pepper hair, styled perfectly despite the rain, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Aaliyah made in 6 months. His Rolex caught the diner's fluorescent light, throwing little prisms across the table. He didn't look up when she poured his coffee. "Thank you," he murmured, his attention fixed on his phone. Jefferson Bruce hadn't wanted to stop at Rosewood Diner. His Tesla had alerted him to a minor battery issue, and the nearest charging station was 30 minutes away in this godforsaken town. He'd pulled into the diner's lot out of necessity, not choice. The place smelled like old grease and broken dreams, exactly the kind of establishment he'd worked so hard to escape. He'd grown up in a town like this, in a diner like this. His father had worked 3 jobs, and his mother had cleaned houses until her knees gave out. Jefferson had sworn he'd never be like them, never be powerless, never be invisible, never be poor, and he'd kept that promise. He'd clawed his way from nothing to everything, and he wore his success like armor. "Can I get you anything else?" Aaliyah asked, her voice professional but warm. Jefferson barely glanced at her. "No, just the check." He'd ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a coffee and a slice of apple pie he'd barely touched. Aaliyah had noticed. Some people came in and ordered like they were starving, even when they weren't. Others ordered like they were afraid of taking up space. Jefferson Bruce ordered like someone who knew exactly what he wanted and refused to deviate from the plan. Aaliyah printed the check, $8.47. She placed it gently on the table in the black vinyl folder they'd been using since the Reagan administration. "Take your time," she said softly. Jefferson pulled out his wallet, extracted a credit card, and placed it on top of the check without looking at the amount. Aaliyah processed the payment, returned with the receipt, and set it beside his coffee cup. He signed with a flourish, stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked out into the rain without a word. "No, thank you. No, have a good night." "Nothing." Aaliyah watched him go, then returned to the table to clear it. She picked up the receipt folder, already knowing what she'd find, or rather, what she wouldn't find. Tip, $0. She stared at the receipt for a long moment. The anger that rose in her chest was familiar, a hot, bitter thing she'd learned to swallow down over years of service work. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the dismissal, the invisibleness. She'd served this man for 20 minutes, refilled his coffee 3 times, smiled, been polite, been professional, and to him, she'd been nothing. Less than nothing. Not even worth $1. Aaliyah took a deep breath, ready to clear the table, when something stopped her. There was something under the plate. At first, Aaliyah thought it was just a napkin that had gotten stuck. She lifted the white ceramic plate, expecting to find paper. Instead, her fingers touched something else, something thick and textured. An envelope, cream-colored, expensive paper sealed. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. It was heavier than she expected, and her name was written on the front in elegant handwriting. For Aaliyah Putin. How did he know her name? She'd been wearing her name tag, of course, but still, the intentionality of it made her heart race. She looked around the nearly empty diner. Titus was in the back. Old Mr. Kowalski was nursing his decough in the corner booth, same as every Thursday. The night cook, Andre, was smoking out back. She was alone. Aaliyah's fingers shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten on matching stationery, folded around something else. She carefully unfolded the letter, and several items fell onto the table. A check, a business card, and a small photograph. She picked up the photograph first, her breath catching in her throat. It showed a young woman in a diner uniform, probably from the 1980s based on the faded color quality. She was smiling, holding a coffee pot, her name tag reading Martha. She looked tired but hopeful, just like, "Oh my God," Aaliyah whispered. She looked like Aaliyah. The resemblance was striking. Same build, same posture, same exhausted but fighting smile. With shaking hands, Aaliyah picked up the letter and began to read. "Dear Aaliyah, you don't know me, but I know you. Not you specifically, but I know who you are. I know what it's like to watch your mother work herself to death for pennies and smiles that don't pay the bills. I know what it's like to be 5 years old and wonder why mommy is always tired. I know what it's like to measure your worth in tips and pray that tomorrow will be different. The woman in the photograph is Martha Bruce, my mother. This picture was taken in 1987 at a diner called Lucky's in Columbus, Ohio. She worked there for 14 years. Double shifts, holidays, weekends, whenever they needed her. She missed my school plays, my baseball games, my graduation. Not because she didn't love me, but because she loved me so much that she sacrificed everything to keep me fed, clothed, and safe. When I was 12, a man came into Lucky's diner. He was wealthy, drove a Mercedes, wore expensive suits. He came in every Thursday for exactly 4 years. My mother served him with the same grace and kindness she showed everyone. He never tipped her. Not once. Not a single dollar in 4 years. I hated that man. I would hide behind the kitchen door and watch him through the round window, wishing I could tell him what I thought of him. Wishing I could make him see my mother, really see her. When I was 16, my mother got sick. Pancreatic cancer. The medical bills buried us. We lost our apartment. We lived in our car for 7 months while she underwent treatment. She died 3 weeks before my 17th birthday. 2 days after her funeral, I received a letter from a law office. The man from the diner, his name was Richard Talmadge, had died of a heart attack 6 months earlier. In his will, he'd left me $250,000 and a letter of explanation. Mr. Talmadge had been testing himself, he wrote, testing his resolve. He'd grown up wealthy, never struggling, never wanting, and he developed a philosophy that people should pull themselves up by their bootstraps. He believed that giving handouts created dependency. So every Thursday, he would go to that diner and leave no tip, reinforcing his worldview that people should work harder if they wanted more. But every Thursday, he also made a deposit into his savings account. For 4 years, he deposited the tip he should have given my mother, plus interest plus more. Much more. He watched her work. He saw her kindness despite his coldness, and somewhere along the way, his test became something else. It became guilt. It became recognition. It became too late. His letter explained that he'd planned to give my mother the money in person, to apologize, to tell her that she'd taught him more about human dignity than he'd learned in his entire privileged life. But he waited too long. Pride, he said, was his fatal flaw. He died with his apology unspoken, and my mother died never knowing that she'd changed someone's life. I'm not Richard Talmadge. I won't wait. Tonight, I walked into your diner angry at the world, angry at myself. My company just fired 200 employees to maximize profit margins for our investors. I signed the paperwork this afternoon. 200 families will wake up tomorrow without income, and I'll wake up $15 million richer from my stock options. I told myself it was just business. I told myself they should have worked harder, been more valuable, made themselves indispensable. Then I saw you. You smiled at me like I was a human being, not a revenue stream. You poured my coffee with the same care you'd give to anyone. You said, "Take your time," like you meant it, even though I could see how exhausted you were. Even though I gave you nothing in return. I left no tip on the receipt because I wanted to feel powerful. I wanted to exercise the same philosophy I've built my empire on, that people get what they deserve based solely on the value they provide to me. But then I sat in my car in your parking lot, and I thought about my mother. I thought about Martha Bruce, who never got her apology, who never knew that she'd cracked the armor around a rich man's heart, who died believing she'd been invisible. I won't let you be invisible, Aaliyah. The check in this envelope is for $150,000. It's not charity. It's not a handout. It's payment for a service rendered. You reminded me that I'm still human. You reminded me that my mother's life meant something. You reminded me that every person I dismiss, every tip I don't leave, every employee I fire without thought is someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone fighting a battle I can't see. Use this money however you need. Pay your bills. Take care of your daughter. Build a future. You've earned it 1,000 times over in invisible labor, in smiles given to people who don't deserve them, in grace extended to a world that rarely returns it. I'm also including my business card. On the back, I've written the name of my personal physician, Dr. Elise Mack. I called her tonight and arranged for her to see your daughter, Diane, at no cost to you. Ever. I heard you on the phone during my visit talking to your neighbor about Diane's cough. Please call Dr. Mack tomorrow. She's expecting you. Finally, I've included information about a position at Novatech Solutions. It's in our community outreach department, which I'm creating as of tonight. The job is yours if you want it. Salary, $85,000 annually, plus full benefits, plus childcare assistance. No experience necessary. I'll train you myself. I can't undo the harm I've caused. I can't bring back the jobs I've eliminated or the people I've treated as numbers on a spreadsheet. But I can start today. With you. With Diane. With remembering that my mother didn't raise me to be rich. She raised me to be good. I failed her. I won't fail you. With profound respect and gratitude, Jefferson Bruce. The photograph of my mother is yours to keep. I have others. But I want you to have this one, so that whenever you doubt your worth, you can look at Martha Bruce and remember, your labor matters, your kindness matters, you matter. Even when the world forgets to show you. Aaliyah's vision blurred as tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and unstoppable. She pressed the letter to her chest, her whole body shaking with sobs she'd been holding back for years. Not just tonight, years. The check fluttered to the table. She picked it up with trembling fingers, $150,000. Made out to Aaliyah Putin. Signed. Real. You okay, honey? Mr. Kowalski's gravelly voice cut through her fog. Aaliyah couldn't speak. She just nodded, clutching the letter like a lifeline. She'd been drowning for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe. The medical bill, the broken car, the rent was due in 6 days. The daycare costs, the student loans from a nursing degree she'd had to abandon when she got pregnant. The weight of it all had pressed down on her shoulders until she'd stopped standing up straight, stopped looking up, stopped hoping, and now this. This impossible, miraculous, life-altering gift from a stranger who'd seen her. Really seen her. But even through the gratitude, a small voice in her head whispered, "Is this real? Is this some kind of cruel joke?" She looked at the business card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Jefferson Bruce, CEO, Novatech Solutions. On the back, handwritten, Dr. Elise Mack, 555-892-4733. Tell her Jefferson sent you. She's expecting your call. Aaliyah grabbed her phone with shaking hands and Googled Jefferson Bruce. Pages of results flooded her screen. Forbes articles, business journals, photos of him at charity galas, at tech conferences, shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. And there, in a profile from 2 years ago, a paragraph that made her heart stop. Bruce credits his late mother, Martha Bruce, as his primary inspiration. She worked in a diner for 14 years, Bruce told reporters. She never complained, never gave up, never stopped believing in me. Everything I am, I owe to her. It was real. All of it. Aaliyah's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Orkin. Diane's fever is up to 101. Should I give her medicine? The fear that had been her constant companion surged back. But this time, it was different. This time, she had a weapon against it. Aaliyah typed back with shaking fingers. Yes. And I'm going to take her to a doctor tomorrow. A real doctor. Everything is going to be okay. She gathered the letter, the check, the photograph, and the business card carefully, placing them back in the envelope. Then she walked to the back office where Titus was scrolling through sports highlights. "Titus, I need to leave early," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. He looked up, annoyed. "We're short-staffed. I know, and I'm sorry. But my daughter is sick, and I need to go home." Something in her tone must have communicated finality because Titus just sighed and waved her off. "Fine, but you're covering for Jenny on Saturday." "Actually," Aaliyah said, surprising herself, "I won't be here Saturday, or any day after tomorrow. I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice." "Well, 1 day's notice, technically." "I'm sorry, Titus. You've been adequate, but I have an opportunity one can't pass up." She didn't wait for his response. She grabbed her purse from her locker, punched out, and walked into the rain. The buses had stopped running for the night, but Aaliyah didn't care. She stood in the parking lot, face turned up to the sky, letting the water wash away the grime and exhaustion and fear. Letting it wash away the version of herself who'd walked into work that morning, the woman who'd stopped believing in miracles. Then she called an Uber, something she never did because it was too expensive. But tonight, she could afford it. Tonight, everything had changed. The next morning, Aaliyah sat in Dr. Orkin's office, holding Diane's small hand while the doctor examined her daughter with gentle competence. The office was beautiful, nothing like the fluorescent horror of the free clinic. There were windows overlooking a garden, paintings on the walls, toys in the corner for children. "Pneumonia," Dr. Orkin said after reviewing the chest x-ray. "Early stage, thankfully. We'll get her started on antibiotics today, and I want to see her again in 1 week." "How much?" Aaliyah started to ask. Dr. Orkin smiled, a warm expression that reached her eyes. Jefferson explained the situation. "There's no charge, Aaliyah. Not today, not ever. Your daughter's health is not a transaction." Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears again. She seemed to be crying every 5 minutes now, releasing years of pent-up emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me. Thank Jefferson and then pass it forward when you can." That afternoon, Aaliyah went to the bank. The teller's eyes widened when she saw the check, and she called over the manager to verify it. 30 minutes later, Aaliyah walked out with a receipt confirming that $150,000 had been deposited into her account. She sat in her broken car, which she could now afford to fix or replace entirely, and made a list. Pay medical bills, $1,247.83. Fix car or buy reliable used one, $5,000. Pay rent 3 months ahead, $2,850. Pay off credit cards, $3,200. Start college fund for Diane, $20,000. Keep for emergency savings, $50,000. Invest remainder, $67,000. For the first time in her adult life, Aaliyah wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. She was planning, building, and dreaming. That evening, she called the number on Jefferson's business card. He answered on the second ring. Jefferson Bruce. Mr. Bruce, this is Aaliyah Putin. From the diner. There was a pause, then a softness entered his voice. Aaliyah, did you receive everything? I did. I don't understand. She took a breath. Why me? Because I could, he said simply. Because my mother couldn't be helped, but you can. Because 200 people lost their jobs yesterday because of decisions I made, and I needed to remember that every number on a spreadsheet is a person, a life. You reminded me of that. The job offer, Aaliyah said. Is it real? Completely. The community outreach department starts Monday. You'll be our director. Your job will be to identify people and organizations in need and figure out how Novatech can help. You'll have a budget of $2 million annually to start. You'll report directly to me. Aaliyah laughed, a sound of pure disbelief. Mr. Bruce, I worked at a diner. I didn't even finish my nursing degree. I'm not qualified to. You're the most qualified person I know, he interrupted. You understand what it means to struggle. You understand dignity and compassion. Those aren't things I can teach. The rest, management, budgets, strategy, one can teach you all of that. But what you have, that's rare. That's valuable. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Take the weekend. Call me Monday if you're interested. I'm interested, Aaliyah said immediately. I'm terrified, but I'm interested. Jefferson laughed, a warm sound. Good. Fear means you care. I'll see you Monday at 9 a.m. And Aaliyah? Bring Diane. We have an on-site daycare. Best in the city. When Aaliyah hung up, she looked at her daughter, who was already breathing easier thanks to the antibiotics. Diane was coloring at the kitchen table, humming to herself, blissfully unaware that their entire world had shifted on its axis. Baby, Aaliyah said, kneeling beside her. How would you like to go to a new school? A really good one. Diane looked up, her brown eyes wide. Can I bring Mr. Snuffles? You can bring whoever you want, sweetheart. The Novatech Community Outreach Office occupied an entire floor of the downtown headquarters. Aaliyah sat at her desk, in a real office, with her name on the door, reviewing proposals. In 6 months, they'd created a scholarship fund for children of single parents. $500,000 distributed to 127 students. Partnered with local restaurants to provide meals for homeless shelters. 45,000 meals served. Launched a job training program for displaced workers. 89 people hired. Established free childcare centers in low-income neighborhoods. 3 centers serving 200 families. But Aaliyah's proudest achievement was the Invisible Labor Initiative. She convinced Jefferson to implement a company-wide policy. Every Novatech employee, from interns to executives, spent 1 day per quarter working in service positions, waiting tables, cleaning offices, stocking shelves. The goal was simple. Remember that every job has dignity. Every worker has worth. Jefferson had been the first to participate, spending a full day bussing tables at Rosewood Diner. Titus had been speechless. The local news had covered it. But more importantly, it had started conversations within Novatech about respect, privilege, and empathy. There was a knock on Aaliyah's door. Jefferson stepped in, smiling. Got a minute? Of course. He sat across from her, and she was struck again by how much he'd changed. The hard edges had softened. He smiled more. He listened more. I wanted to show you something, he said, pulling out his phone. He showed her an email from a woman named Patricia. Oh, she's one of the 200 employees we laid off 6 months ago. Read what she wrote. Aaliyah read, Dear Mr. Bruce, when I was laid off from Novatech, I thought my career was over. I was angry, bitter, and scared. But the severance package you provided included career counseling and job placement assistance. Your team helped me update my resume, practice interviews, and connect with other companies. Last month, I was hired as a senior engineer at Quantum Dynamics. My salary is 40% higher than what I made at Novatech. But more than that, I found a company culture that values work-life balance, something I'd sacrificed for years. Being laid off was the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for forcing me out of my comfort zone and for providing the support to land somewhere better. With gratitude, Patricia O. We've received 47 similar letters, Jefferson said quietly. Not everyone landed on their feet, so we're still struggling. But we're tracking all 200 people, and the outreach team, your team, is providing ongoing support. Aaliyah felt the familiar sting of tears, but blinked them back. You're trying to fix it. I'm trying, he agreed. It won't undo the harm. But maybe if we help enough people, if we create enough opportunity, if we remember that business decisions affect real lives, maybe we can tip the scales back toward good. Your mother would be proud, Aaliyah said softly. Jefferson's eyes grew misty. So would yours. Aaliyah thought of her own mother, who'd passed away when Aaliyah was 19. Her mother had cleaned houses, just like Jefferson's mother had worked in a diner. Two women, a generation apart, fighting the same battle against invisibility. I had lunch with the mayor yesterday, Aaliyah said, changing the subject before she started crying in front of her boss again. She wants to expand the Invisible Labor Initiative citywide. Every city employee, from the mayor herself to sanitation workers, spends time in different roles to build empathy and understanding. Jefferson's face lit up. That's incredible, Aaliyah. Will you lead the implementation? Already started, she said with a smile. We launch in 3 months. 1 year to the day after Jefferson had walked into Rosewood Diner, Aaliyah stood at a podium in the ballroom of the Grand Millhaven Hotel. The room was packed with 500 people, community leaders, Novatech employees, journalists, and representatives from the dozens of organizations they'd partnered with over the past year. Diane sat in the front row next to Mrs. Orkin, who'd become like a grandmother to the little girl. Diane wore a new dress blue with little flowers and clutched Mr. Snuffles proudly. Jefferson had asked Aaliyah to speak at Novatech's annual Community Impact Gala. She tried to decline, terrified of public speaking. But he'd insisted. Your story matters, he'd said. People need to hear it. Now, standing in front of hundreds of faces, Aaliyah took a deep breath and began. A year ago tonight, I was working the late shift at Rosewood Diner, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I was exhausted, scared, and hopeless. My daughter was sick, my car was broken, and I had medical bills I couldn't pay. I felt invisible, like the world looked right through me. The room was silent. That night, a man came into the diner. He ordered coffee and pie. When he left, there was no tip on his receipt. I felt dismissed, erased. But what I didn't know was that under his plate, he'd left something far more valuable than money. Aaliyah paused, gathering her courage. He left recognition. He left dignity. He left a message that said, I see you. You matter. Your struggle is real, and you deserve better. She pulled out the photograph of Martha Bruce, holding it up for the room to see. This is Martha Bruce, Jefferson's mother. She worked in a diner for 14 years. She never knew that she'd changed a rich man's life through her simple acts of kindness. She died believing she'd been invisible. Aaliyah's voice broke, but she pushed forward. Jefferson gave me $150,000 that night. But the real gift wasn't the money. It was the mirror he held up to himself, to me, to all of us. He showed me that invisible labor is still labor. That kindness counts. That every person serving you food, cleaning your office, ringing up your groceries is fighting a battle you can't see. She looked directly at Jefferson, who was wiping his eyes unabashedly. And he showed himself that he could choose compassion over pride, that he could acknowledge harm and try to repair it. That wealth is worthless if it builds walls instead of bridges. Aaliyah set down the photograph and picked up a folder. Over the past year, the Novatech Community Outreach Initiative has distributed $2.3 million to local organizations. We've served 78,000 meals. We've provided scholarships to 289 students. We placed 412 people in jobs. We've opened 5 childcare centers. She paused, but numbers don't tell the whole story. Behind every number is a person, a life. Someone who was invisible became seen. She opened the folder and read, Patricia O., former Novatech engineer, now thriving in new company. Miguel Bakery, homeless veteran, now housed and employed. Sarah Lindstrom, single mother of 3, now enrolled in nursing school. Jamal Washington, laid-off factory worker, now running his own contracting business. Aaliyah looked around the room. These are just 4 names. We have hundreds more. Each one represents a person who was struggling, who was counted out, who was invisible, until someone saw them. She closed the folder and gripped the podium. So tonight, I challenge everyone in this room. Who are you not seeing? Whose labor are you taking for granted? Who have you dismissed because they couldn't provide immediate value to you? The room was absolutely still. Because here's what I've learned this year. We're all one bad break away from being invisible. One medical emergency. One layoff. One broken car. The only difference between me serving you coffee and you serving me is luck. Timing. Circumstances we don't control. Aaliyah's voice grew stronger. But what we can control is how we treat each other. We can choose to see, to acknowledge, to lift up instead of dismiss. We can leave more than $0 on the receipt. We can leave dignity, recognition, hope. She smiled through her tears. A year ago, Jefferson Bruce left a gift under a plate that changed my life. But he also started a ripple. Because I'm not the only one who's been helped. I'm just the first, and now it's my job, our job, to keep that ripple going. To see the invisible, to honor the struggle, to remember that every person is fighting a battle we know nothing about. Aaliyah looked at Diane, who was clapping enthusiastically even though she probably didn't understand half of what her mother had said. My daughter will grow up in a different world than I did because one man chose compassion over pride. She'll know that hard work is honored, that kindness is rewarded, that her mother was never invisible. She was just waiting to be seen. The room erupted in applause. People stood, cheering, some openly crying. Jefferson was the first on his feet, clapping until his hands hurt. Aaliyah stepped away from the podium, overwhelmed, and Jefferson met her with a hug. "Thank you," he whispered, "for reminding me why we do this." "Thank you," she whispered back, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Aaliyah Putin stood in the parking lot of what had once been Rosewood Diner. The building had closed a year ago, another casualty of rising rents and changing neighborhoods. But today it was being reborn. A crowd had gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The new sign above the door read, Martha's Place Community Resource Center. Inside, where tables and booths had once stood, there were now computer stations, a job counseling office, a food pantry, a childcare center, and a commercial kitchen where people could take cooking classes and get food handler certifications. And in the corner, preserved exactly as it had been, was a single booth with a bronze plaque that read, Table 12, where the invisible became seen, November 2025. Jefferson stood beside Aaliyah, both of them staring at the booth. "Do you think it's too much?" he asked. Aaliyah laughed. "Definitely too much. But I love it anyway." Diane, now 8 years old and thriving in 3rd grade, tugged on her mother's hand. "Mommy, can I cut the ribbon?" "Absolutely, baby." They walked to the front entrance where Mrs. Orkin held a giant pair of ceremonial scissors. The crowd quieted. Jefferson took the microphone. 3 years ago, I learned the most valuable lesson of my life in this building. I learned that wealth means nothing if it doesn't serve humanity. That success measured solely in dollars is actually failure. That my mother's greatest legacy wasn't that she worked hard. It was that she treated everyone with dignity, even when the world offered her none in return. He gestured to the building. Martha's Place exists because we believe everyone deserves a second chance, a fresh start, a moment of recognition. The programs here are free. The help is unconditional. And the message is simple. You are seen. You matter. You deserve better. He handed the microphone to Aaliyah. She looked at the crowd, service workers, community members, city officials, reporters, people who'd been helped by the outreach initiative, and people who'd helped make it possible. I don't have much to add to what Jefferson said, Aaliyah began. Except this, 3 years ago, I was drowning. I worked 60-hour weeks and still couldn't keep my head above water. I smiled at customers who didn't see me. I served people who treated me like a robot in a uniform, and I started to believe that maybe I really was invisible. Maybe my struggle didn't matter. Maybe I deserved exactly what I got, nothing. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. Then a stranger reminded me that I was human, that my labor had value, that my daughter deserved a mother who could dream again, not just survive. She looked at Jefferson. He could have walked away that night feeling good about himself for leaving a big tip. But instead, he left a mirror. He forced both of us to look at ourselves honestly. And that honesty changed everything. Aaliyah turned back to the crowd. Martha's Place isn't just a resource center. It's a promise that we will see you. We will honor your struggle. We will walk beside you until you can walk on your own. Because that's what Martha Bruce would have wanted. That's what every invisible worker in every diner, office, store, and factory deserves. She motioned to Diane, "Baby, come help me." Together, mother and daughter held the giant scissors. The crowd counted down, 3, 2, 1. The ribbon fell away, and Martha's Place was officially open. This marks the beginning of a new chapter. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted, and that even broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena, because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently if you were the millionaire. Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? We'd love to hear your story.